Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today, my guest is Dr. Teresa A. Smith, or Dr. TAS. Dr. TAS is an author, coach, prophetess, speaker, talk show host, and radio contributor. Her first book, Stronger: How Overcoming Life's Adversities Can Push You Into Your Purpose, was listed number 2 on the list of 20 books Oprah should read in 2019. As an incest and trauma overcomer, she lives life with the mantra, I own who I am. This mindset motivates her to appreciate and accept life circumstances in her quest to reach her fullest potential and help others achieve theirs. Her latest book, Transformation, is a guide to assisting others in developing an unapologetically spiritual life for themselves and in service to God. Dr. Taz Talk with Taz segment airs on Conversations Live on ABC News Radio, KMET 1490. Her talk show, Transform with Taz, shares healthy cooking tips that strengthen God's vessels and spotlights individuals who have learned to thrive regardless of their circumstances. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Taz.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Yeah, so happy to have you on this nice early morning, and excited to hear all about your books and your show and what you've been doing. So just so people got to know you, tell us your story, how you started out, how you got to be doing what you're doing.
Well, Kimberly, it's a long story, but it's a short story. Now, I'm from the South, so I say long but short, so it's a long story. I'm from North Carolina, and I'm a proud North Carolinian. And as a little girl, I grew up in a small rural area. It was a wonderful life. And thinking about it now, I can remember my high school teacher saying that these were the best years of our life, but I didn't understand it. And even though I had challenges that I overcame, when I think about it now, it really was the best time of my life. As a little girl, I was sexually abused. I also witnessed my uncle's death at the hands of the police, and I lost my sight when I was about to tell the year. Guys, I can't tell the year, but I lost my sight when I was in elementary school. And so dealing with these are the major 3 things that were very traumatic for me. I just sort of always gravitated towards something that was different. And at the time, I called it my defense mechanism, but really it was my way of coping with what life was giving me. And in that striving for something different, I was drawn to older people. And, when you're drawn to older people, if you listen, you learn from them. And so I was like a sponge, I would just absorb everything. And so I found that as I was absorbing things, that folks were gravitating towards me. And they were asking me questions, and I would give them that sage wisdom, even though I was a little girl. But it was because folks were pouring into me, and I was learning, even though I didn't understand at the time, how to cope, how to deal with things that were happening. And so when I think about it, it's like I've always done this. You hear folks have always said, what is it that you would do if you didn't get paid for it? That is your passion in life. And this is my passion in life because for a long time, I never got paid for it. So it sort of evolved from there. I will say that I was also fascinated, and still am, with the law and medicine. I was always going to either be a doctor or go to law school. I took the LSAT, and then I decided to go and get an MBA. I worked in the hospital for a long time. So those things still thrill me. But when I think about it, I think that my initial desire to do those things were also a part of a coping mechanism. Being an incest overcomer, that's that legal aspect of it, wanting to make sure justice is provided for folks. Also seeing my uncle shot. And I will tell you, it's only recently that I realized that I'm a family member who lost someone to police violence. As a little girl, I didn't think about it that way, Kim. It was just my uncle was killed in front of us. But now I realize when I think of it from today's lens that I'm an individual who has experienced violence and loss of a loved one at the hand of the police. So it has a whole nother layer to who I am, but that also speaks to the that legal. It also speaks to the mental health. My uncle was a Vietnam veteran. So I saw my mom really working hard to get him services in the 70s. So I am really going to date myself a little bit, but it's okay to date yourself now because I'm so thankful to be living and still have all my faculties. So that drive for helping individuals, it was just, I think it was born out of my desire to help myself and to be okay with what I was experiencing. So for me, it has been, it's an organic thing. It's just continued to evolve as I've grown and as I've met people and as I've learned things. Now, I will say on the flip side, because folks are like, okay, so does she have education to do some of these things? Yes. You know, my first degree, and listen to what I just said now, is in criminal justice and psychology. Go figure. Then my master's is in counseling education. And my initial job was working with students in alternative schools. And at the time, I didn't realize it was really sort of groundbreaking because we hear more now and it's being more accepted that we have to meet our students where they are. Some students cannot operate effectively in a traditional setting. And now we've got COVID, so we really are aware that we've got to determine what the needs of students are, remove some of those barriers in order to provide them with ample services. But at the time that I was starting out as a school counselor, it was new. And I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. Some folks still thought that those students were different, but in a negative sense. They were sort of, second-class citizens. And some of them just needed a different environment. They needed instruction to be different. I tell folks the story. A couple of years ago, I ran into one of my students. And I was in the elevator, he got on, no, he was in the elevator, I got on. And he's like, Miss Smith? And I looked up at him. I'm like, yes. He's like, you don't know who this is, do you? And I looked at him and I thought, and then it hit, and I was like, oh, such and such. I won't call his name. I said, such and such. And he's like, yes. And I'm like, how are you doing? Because he was in that first group of students that I taught as a school counselor. And I am going to go ahead and say it, in like 1995. So for me to see him really almost like decades later, and he's like, I'm doing well. He's like, I'm here. I was working on my dad's benefits because his father had been an aerial pilot who was a paraplegic. And so he was like, I'm taking care of his business. I've got a good girlfriend. I'm at the community college. And for me, it was heartwarming because I'd always told him, you are brilliant. And he was, but his life circumstances prevented him from seeing it and even wanting to accept just how smart he was and to see that he'd come full circle. So as I said, it's sort of been organic, but I do have the education. And then to see how individuals that you've worked with, how they have progressed, it really, for me, it's almost like, this is the reason I get up every day so that I can make a difference. And then sometimes, God will let me see that I've made a difference. So, but that's sort of how I got to this place.
That is awesome. So many different things. And I think at this point, so many of us have different parts to what we're doing anymore. Lately when people say, well, what do you do? Or, who are you? What do you do? And I think, well, I think I'll just answer that by saying, how can I help you? What do you need right now? What's your biggest challenge? Because I have a background similar to yours. I was in medicine and now I'm in finances, and it just changes as we change and grow and see where God wants us to go. And speaking of that, talk about your faith, how important that is to you and how that plays in your life.
Yeah, Kim, thank you for that question. And I'm not going to cry this morning, hopefully not. I couldn't do anything without God. I remember as a little girl, it was before my parents had central air. air conditioning. For folks who don't know what I mean when I say that, because this will be heard all around the world. They're like, air? What do you mean by air? Central air conditioning. I can remember in the summertime, my mom would put, the window would be up at night, and my mom would put the curtain, she'd move it out the way, she'd kind of put it in the open window. And I can remember the cars passing by, and I can remember lying there crying and talking to God, because for me, he was the only person that I had that I thought was listening to me. I grew up in the church, and I would just talk to him, you know, about how I was feeling, and I didn't understand, because I was talking about the incest, and I didn't understand, and I was asking him to help me, you know, just please help me. And I would ask him why. And I had been asking him why ever since I was a little girl, and I never got an answer. And so, you know, but I didn't walk away from him, and I know he didn't walk away from me. And, you know, there were other trials and tribulations and things that were happening, you know, bullying, all those sorts of things that you experience with adolescent and even into college and early adulthood. But I never left him, and he never left me. And so I would talk to him, and, you know, I say talk to him. Sometimes I say praying, because for me, prayer is just having a conversation with God. And so I will tell you, I think about maybe about 13 years ago now, give or take, I was on the highway commuting to my job at that time. And all of a sudden, I got my answer. And in my 30s, I had told myself, you don't question God. And I stopped asking. And what I mean is I stopped asking him why, because I realized you don't question him. But about 13, 14 years ago, I guess I was on my way to work, commuting to work, and all of a sudden it was like an avalanche. And I got my answer. And, you know, I shouldn't tell it, but I'm trying to write and drive, because it was like it was like a book being poured out over me, of water. And it was just coming so quickly. And so for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I listened to no secular music. I was listening to sermons and messages all the time. I was just immersed in that. And I just knew that I had to be. I can't really explain it. I knew that I had to be in order to get what he was trying to give me. And basically what he said in a nutshell was, this happened to you so that you would understand what it means to hurt. You won't know other people's pain because pain is so individualized, but you will know what it means to hurt. You will know what it means to almost have lost hope that things can be better. You'll know what it means to have achieved in so many areas of your life, because I earned my doctorate. It's not, I have 4 degrees, MBA and a doctorate. No, they're not honorary. I earned them all. And at the time that this was happening, I already had my doctorate too. But you'll know what it means to have all of what man thinks is important, but still hurt, still be looking for something, an answer to something that man really can't answer. You will know what that feels like. And you will be able to help people to understand that it's normal, that there's nothing wrong with them. It's just that their life is more important, because everybody's life is, but their life is more important than what they can understand. And that there is something specific that they have to do. And in order to be able to do it, they have to go through certain things in life. And he said to me, you'll be able to do it because you live in it. It's different from, we get the education, we get the academic education, but there's something about living it that makes the difference, because I see connections that my academic brain don't see, but I see them because I live it every day. And then he said to me, understand, just because you finally got an answer, it's not over. If the answer was the finish line, then my job with you, I would have failed you as God, because that means you will now become stagnant. you will still go through things. You will still struggle, because doing that, it keeps you humble. It keeps you in touch with humanity, and you understand the struggle, because we've got whatever, if you don't mind, I'm gonna say something that you said, Kim, if you don't mind. I hope you don't mind. As we were starting, you said my book. I've been picking up my book a lot lately. Happiness, I think it's the name of it. And what that said to me is, even though from an analytical, academic, training profession, what's needed. You wrote the book. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we have to pick up our own book, flip through a page and read it, and then apply it in our own lives over and over again. And to me, that's what makes us effective, because we are living this daily. There is no finish line. The finish line, unfortunately, folks, is when we are no longer on earth, because we're human beings. We're going to continually encounter things that are going to throw us off our game. And we thought, I had overcome that. Well, you did, but now you got another situation. Let's see if you can grow a little bit more and overcome it in a different way. And so for me, that faith piece, I couldn't do anything without him. He's with me all day long, and he's even with me when I don't even know how to say, Jesus, help me, but he's still there. And for me, I've had to get to a place also that I don't mind, because I talk about him, but I talk about him differently, because we are becoming more accepting of things in our society. We should become more accepting of people's faith. And I shouldn't have to curtail my speaking about God when it's okay for people to do X, Y, Z, whatever that is. And I'm okay with X, Y, Z, but we still are sort of trying to separate church and state. But we shouldn't, because that's my culture. And I should be able to express that in everything that I do without fear that my employer is going to say, oh my gosh, she said God in this conversation. Well, why did she say that? I shouldn't live in a space that way, because he's with us, whether you look at him as God, as I do, whether you look at it as some higher being or higher power, that person, that entity is a part of your life. And you should be able to embrace that in every aspect.
Beautiful. Thank you for all that wisdom. You're just outpouring. Thank you. So if someone is going through those hard times right now, where they're asking why, or they're just hurting so much, what would you tell them to do? Where would they start to just get some relief and to feel, back on their game?
Well, my last book is called Transformation, and the first chapter is Change is Challenging. What I would say to them is, in a quiet space, however they want to do it, they can do it on their phone, they can do it old school with a sheet of paper. Write down the situation quickly, what's the essence of it. Then write down the pros and cons as far as why you're in this situation, what you can do to get out of it. Then the next step that I would ask them to do is, what's preventing you? Because I think, because I grew up on pros and cons, good, bad, but the thing that I've learned is that I now have to ask myself, what's stopping me from really moving? What is it about it? What is that fear? Because it's the fear piece that makes us, I believe, stay in that state. Why is it? Because I've often asked myself, why is it that someone would be a victim of domestic violence and not move out of that space? Of course, it's fear for life. I get that. But also, for some folks, it's what they know. And they get comfortable. And you may say, well, how can you be comfortable in a place where you're being hurt? Well, I know what to expect. I know the warning signs. I know how to try to, minimize it when I see those signs. So I'm comfortable there. It could be a job. Why won't the person leave? They've applied for jobs. They don't get the promotion. They have the education. They got the experience. Well, they know what to expect on their job. So again, the question is, why won't you move? So my thing is, and I now tell folks, let's identify what's really got you there. Because until we can determine the why, we don't know how. Meaning we don't know how to move out of that space. We're there. And sometimes we get stuck in that space for a very long time because if we have discovered the why, we're fearful. That's the reason I'm thinking faith over fear, because we've got to get to a space also where we're able to do things, even we're going to expect the best, but not knowing what's going to occur. And I know Dr. TAS is long-winded. Someone said to me, they don't say it that way, but I'm going to say it that way. I think about a scripture that I love so much. And I talk about this because I want folks to understand that even when Christ was here on earth, he experienced humanity. And when he's in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prays to the Father and says, if it be thy will that the cup should pass over. Well, as I tell people, don't forget, God the Father, the Son, he's that one person. He came as his son to earth so that we would be able to have life and have it more abundantly, because he came, he died for our sins, those sorts of things. But think about the ironic piece of it from a human perspective. Christ is in the Garden of Gethsemane. He came to die. So he's asking if it's thy will that the cup should pass, meaning that he doesn't have to go to the cross and die for us, but he's praying to himself. So then I think about that self-talk. So he's having a dialogue, that inner dialogue, that conflict, that, conflicted dialogue, it's a contradiction sometimes. He's having that type of dialogue with himself. Now we know that he got up and he went to the cross and he died for us. But think about what I'm saying. When we are conflicted, one moment I'm hot, one moment I'm cold, one moment I'm out the door, I'm leaving this job, or I'm leaving this person, I'm leaving this situation, and then the next you're back in it. Christ gave us an example of how that really is a part of human nature. So we have to focus on what part of it is it that's keeping us stuck there. That means we can't move forward. He knew what he had to do. So he was able to harness his mind, his energy around what was for the betterment. And so he got up from his knees and he went and did what he came to earth to do. Likewise, we have to do that, but we've got to identify what is it that has me stuck, that I can't move forward, or I'm half out the door and the next thing you know, I'm still there for 10 years and pretty soon I'll be retiring. And I never thought that I would stay there that long when I had so much potential, but I stayed. So I think that that's what I like to zero in, is the why. And I will tell you, that's the hardest part of transformation, because that means you have to be honest with yourself as to why are you still doing this when you know you should have moved on 5 years ago, but you're still stuck at that same space.
Exactly. And I have studied something called neuro-linguistic programming, which in English just means that we take someone through a process, just it takes a few minutes to help change their mindset or change how they're thinking about something so they can actually move forward in their life. And there's something, the first thing we ask them is, are you ready to change this? Or a similar question. And if we get any hesitation at all, we know there's secondary gain. Secondary gain means there is something there that is good, something about it that they like, that they don't want to give up, even though going to the next level would be so much better for them. They just like that. I mean, and I think of it because I've struggled with this my whole life with, sugar addiction. Yeah, I do want to eat healthy, but man, I sure would like to have that chocolate ice cream every once in a while. So there's a conflict there. If there's something, like you said, familiar, comfortable, something that you don't want to give up. And you just have to do that list, just like you said, where, okay, well, this is the pro. If I don't do this, I could still keep having this thing that I like. But look at this thing I could have over here. And you just have to go through that process of saying it'd be okay to give this up, this familiar thing, to have this much better thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I like the way that you said, I'm making little notes over here, the neuro-linguistic process. And when the person doesn't readily want to make the change, there is that secondary gain. And I think sometimes, Kim, that folks don't even they realize it, but they don't understand the significance of of their choice to remain there for the secondary gain. And I think that's eye-opening. And if once your eyes are open, if you're okay with that, that's fine. But at least be real with yourself as to why you're remaining in that space. And I think, like I said, that is hard for folks to wrap their brains around because they think it's just at this surface. Oh, no, no, no. There's always another layer, either up or down or sideways, that is keeping you where you are. Our job is to determine what that layer is and how important it is to you and your goals.
Mm-hmm. And when you're working with people, just talking about those layers, sometimes we get rid of a layer, like you said, and we feel like, oh, I get so much relief. But then the next layer comes up. So as you're working with people, how do you help them kind of go down those layers and keep transforming and not give up as they're transforming? Because it's so easy to think, oh, I was feeling better. Now I'm down here again. And what, am I doing something wrong?
No, and that's the question. Am I doing something wrong? No, you're living. We are so, Fritz Perl is that, is folding back the onion. I think it's Fritz Perl. But, we are so multifaceted. We are so complex. And basically, the way I look at it is this is what I try to teach my clients. Every time we pull back a layer and you get a good footing, and then that next layer comes, that shows growth. Because think about it, before we have lots of layers that we never get down to. But when you pull one back and you learn and you pull another one back, that's growth. And that's what you want to see in life. It's just, it's an emotional growth that sometimes impacts our physical body, it impacts our soul or our spirit, our emotions. And that's what makes it challenging. And sometimes, if I'm honest, we don't want to do it because it takes so much out of us. And if you're not in a growth mindset, you think it means that you're less than, but it doesn't. It really means that you are more formidable than folks who appear to have it all going on, but they're not doing the work. And so for me, you've got to transform your mindset so that you see that the work that you're doing is so valuable. I've got an event that I'm going to be doing in a couple of months with someone, and we were chatting yesterday, and we were talking about legacy. And the thing is, the legacy that we leave to our family, friends, whomever we're leaving it to, our community, the world at large, it's not just about money. Some folks think money is the highest level of prosperity. As a teacher of mine says, it's the lowest form, and they're right. Because you can leave money, and money can do lots of things, and we need capital. But think about the good that we do that is priceless. When you teach me how to think, how to handle problems that come up in life, how to do the work to become the best person that I can be, understanding that work is going to be done repeatedly rather, within my lifespan. That's legacy. It's not something that you can touch, but it's legacy. And then we pass that on to the next person. It doesn't have to be a family member. So to me, if we could get our mind to think of it as prosperity, as legacy. And so when we're peeling back all the layers and we encounter another little hiccup, and we manage to get that one ironed out, then we encounter another one in 3 or 4, 5, 6 months, whatever, year down the road, that's growth. And from a spiritual perspective now, Christ came so that we could have life and have it more abundantly, so that we don't have to go to heaven to have that. We can have it here on earth, but every time we encounter something, our life, and we overcome it, our life should become better. We're living that, having life more abundantly here. We just have to view it differently. And I think That's the human existence. That's the hard thing, because we look at it as, oh, some of us look at it as, oh, I guess I'm not doing as well as I thought I was. I guess I'm not making any progress. I thought I had gotten this beat. I thought this, I thought that. You're thinking from a human mind. You're not thinking from a soul or spiritual mind that shows you you are doing good. You are transforming. You're getting better. You're going to be able to help other people because of your experiences. But, we don't see it that way. And I have to say this, I think about our celebrities. I think about people in our families who are doing so well. But what we fail to understand sometimes is that these people are human beings. When you see them out on the red carpet, or their attorney or whatever, in your family, whomever in the community, they're out in the courtroom or they're a doctor, whatever, they are doing their job. And they put their best foot forward. When we do our job, we put our best foot forward. But behind the scene, they are dealing with life just as you and I are. So don't feel that you are not good enough. You are enough. You are good enough. You're dealing with life just like everyone else. It's just that you know what you're dealing with. We don't know what they are dealing with. And so that's the reason we're like, oh, they got it going on. No, they're dealing with something too, because no one gets through life without having to deal with something.
That's right. I was going to say amen. Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
It's so true. So let's talk about cooking. When did your love of cooking begin?
Now you see that big smile. I have been cooking since I was a little girl. Years ago, there was this little, I keep saying I'm going to look it up. There was this little box cake mix that you could get. It was all in one, had the icing and everything. And so I started with my Easy Bake Oven. And then I graduated to that. And then my mother taught me how to make cornbread from scratch when I was 9. And then I started making cakes from scratch. And I was the oldest of two daughters at that time. And so my chore was to cook, which was a chore of love. And so I've been cooking ever since I was a little girl. And so my mother did catering, she's done a lot of different things. And so I had to help. And so I helped her cater. So that meant I had to be her tester and all that stuff, testing the food. And so it just grew. And so I've always loved cooking. And for me, cooking is the cathartic. It relaxes me. And so when the opportunity presented, I'm like, how can I marry my love of cooking and my love of helping people? And so that's how I came up with, cooking on Instagram Live, because it gives me a chance to dialogue with folks. And then my cooking show, which is me in the kitchen cooking, and I'm transforming that, I call it that really good food, but not so good for you food. I transform it to a healthier version because I've had some health issues that I've overcome. And so for me, I have to have good tasting food, right? Very small portions, and it needs to be a certain way. And so my thought was, if you're creating recipes that taste good, why not share it with folks? Because you don't have to have the same physical conditions that I have to eat healthy food that tastes good. Because I think we all, our taste buds, it's so important, to feed that soul, literally to feed our bodies. And so that's how I started doing that. And I started my show early 2022. And so I am just so excited every time I'm in the kitchen live or whenever I drop one of my shows, Transform with TAS.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm thinking about that. So I'm from up north, and I remember I'd been here quite a while, and someone introduced me to Southern food, country fried steak, greens, those sweet potato yam things. I'm like, oh my gosh, why didn't anyone ever introduce this to me before? And I liked it so much. There was a little restaurant not that far from my office. So when I had a chance, I would go over there and get, especially those greens. I'm like, oh, I love those greens. So I actually went on, on the internet, and I'm looking, I'm like, how do I make these? So after a while, I was making a huge pot of greens every week. And I was eating, didn't matter what I was eating, but I was eating greens with it.
Yes.
So, to take something like that, so, the greens themselves are pretty healthy, but some of the other stuff with it, if you can take it and make it healthier, it sure, make it taste good.
Mhm. And as a Southern girl, we love our greens. And I tell you, I cooked some collard greens last week, and they were fresh collard greens that I cooked. And let me tell you, for those in the South, you'll know what I mean. Those who've been in the South, you'll know what I mean. I put no fat meat in it. And my mother calls it fat meat, but she never cooked with fat meat. She don't like fat meat. So I didn't put any fat meat in it. And I used the broth to season it. And it's quite good. I'm enjoying it. And I think that we forget that you can have what you need. Well, I shouldn't say what you need. You can have some of what you want. We just have to prepare it differently. And as you said, the greens are healthy. Collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, whatever. That's just like having salad, or let me say it different. It's like having spinach or kale. It's all about how you prepare it. And so, but I'm glad to know that we pulled you to the southern side with the sweet potato souffle or casserole and the yams and the greens, because they are good.
They are so good. And just a little plug here for greens, spinach, collards from the eye doctor here. That is the best thing you can do to make your eyes healthy. Eat those greens. There's lutein in them. You want to eat your greens every day. The darker, the better. So a little plug for healthy food. And now when you're cooking, you're also sharing. And so you're feeding people from a physical standpoint. You're feeding them from an emotional, mental, spiritual standpoint. And what kind of reactions have you gotten as far as your show and people talking about your show?
I've gotten good, very good response, Kim. Folks are like, "So do you really cook all that?" I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "Okay, so where are the recipes?" And I post the recipes in the description on because the show's on my YouTube channel, so I post the description there. And folks have been like, "Well, I wouldn't have thought to do this, or I wouldn't have thought to do that." When you have, I'm thinking about the phrase, and I'm going to butcher it. What is it? I'm gonna say it this way, necessity drives invention. And so it's like, I know that I can only eat. I've had gastric sleeve surgery, folks. I had Graves' disease that went undiagnosed for a year. And so we diagnosed that, but then once they put me on a hormone replacement for the thyroid, we could not regulate my levels. And so I blew up and we couldn't get me to scale back down. So we finally did the sleeve surgery. So I can only eat small portions of food. And so folks are like, "So you cook all this food, what do you do?" I've told people how I freeze, because I have to freeze it, because it's hard to think about it. This, Kim, how do you cook one serving of greens? Is that one leaf? Is it two leaves?
Possible, almost.
It's impossible. And then to season, because it's going to be over seasoned, because is it just a little sprig of I mean, you can't really do that. And so, I've had lots of folks reach out to me wanting to know, okay, so what type of protein do you use to supplement? I've been talking and coaching folks through that, because what I've also found is that we've had a lot of people, well, let me say this differently. Metabolic surgery has become more acceptable. And so there are lots of people who've had the surgery, but some people really struggle to maintain their weight afterwards. And to have the surgery, you go through a psychological examination, a whole bunch of things. But I think what makes it a little different for me is, one, I worked in medicine. Two, I had changed my eating habits. And that's the reason I was so heartbroken. Talk about layers. I was so heartbroken when I couldn't lose weight. I changed my eating habits right before 9/11. So I know what to eat. I eat only fresh fruits and vegetables. I really try not to ever eat any processed meats. Because for me, I learned that's the only way I can control what goes in my body. So when we fast forward, and I was dealing with this thyroid issue, and I was eating properly and I couldn't lose weight, that was very disheartening. But it helps me on the flip side now, because it wasn't a major transition for me as it relates to how I eat. You mentioned sugar, Kim. I stopped having real sugar around 9/11. So I'm not a person that has to have soft drinks. I never was a big soft drinker. I'm not a person that has to have sweet tea. I got somebody in my family, they got to have the sweet tea. I don't have to have that. I can drink hot tea with nothing in it. I can eat oatmeal with nothing in it. I can eat a salad, tossed salad, some folks what I mean, with tomatoes, with no dressing, because I did it for so long, I don't miss that. So I think that, it's been kind of eye-opening for folks to see that she really does eat this stuff. I do, and I'm very passionate about it because I eat so small amounts, that for me, that flavor has got to slap you in your face, because I only get about 2-3 bites and I'm done. And a friend of mine, he's a performer, he saw me eat something very much after I'd had my surgery. And he's like, "Are you full?" I said, "Oh, I'm full." And his thing was, "You're full?" And I said, "I'm full, Tony." And it's my running joke. I'll be like, "I'm full, Tony." He's not even here to hear me when I say it, because it's like I've eaten so little and it's like I'm full. So for me, the flavor's got to be there. And so folks have been, reaching out to me, asking for recipes, asking me, now, how do you do this? How do you do that? And the whole concept, guys, is if you've got recipes that you want transformed, send them to me, because I can't say that I can transform every recipe, Kim, but I will certainly give it a try, because it's thrilling for me. It's like a crossword puzzle or Sudoku. I love it, so, but the response has been very well.
That was wonderful. So just so people can reach out to you at this point, could you just tell us what services you provide? Where do people find you? Where do they find your show and your books and everything?
Thank you. My books, we're going to start with my books. All of my books are on Amazon. You can find them there. My first book is Stronger, How Overcoming Life's Adversity Can Push You Into Your Purpose. I have an ebook that is called From Bravery to Victory, which is sort of like a precursor to Stronger, and it's only an ebook. Then Transformation is my latest book, and it's also on Amazon. Dr. Teresa A. Smith, you can find it there. My show, Transform with TAS, is on my YouTube channel. So if you just search for Dr. TAS, it will pop up and you'll see that. And services that I provide coaching services, and I tailor those services to the needs of the individual. I'm going to be honest, I'm one of those individuals. I want you to do the work, because for me, the greatest thing is to see someone go from here to there. And I recognize that doing the work is going to be challenging. And so I challenge my clients, because for me, if they're not growing, that means I'm not growing. It's like I've done something wrong. So, I work with folks, individual, I work with couples. It just depends upon what the needs are. And then I do a tailored plan for that particular individual or that couple. You can always find me on LinkedIn. I'm also Dr. Teresa A. Smith on there, AKA Dr. TAS. You can find me on Instagram. I'm Dr. Teresa Smith. I'm on Facebook, Teresa Smith, Dr. Teresa Smith. I also have a website, Ask Dr. TAS. You can find me there. So I'm all over social media, but my mission, if I could say it that way, is to help people evolve into the best version of themselves, understanding that it takes a lot of hard work, and helping them to understand that just because you have a setback, it doesn't really mean it's a setback. It's a setup for a comeback. So what are you saying, TAS? It's like dancing, and I have no rhythm, but I like to move anyway. You back me up a couple of steps and say I get stuck there for a little while, but then you move me forward and I go a few steps forward. So that's the way life is. And I want folks to understand that what they're feeling, what they're encountering is just normal. And that's what we work on in my coaching sessions.
Right. Well, thank you so much. So now just a personal question. What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
You know, I'm going to answer it from this perspective because I've talked about all the things that I love to do. I think, and you guys hear me say, I think, because it changes every day. I think what gives me the most pleasure at this moment is when I do have my aha moment. And my aha moment may be, oh, I thought I had gotten over that. I'm not. Let me work on that some more. I know that sounds so strange because there are some things that I thought I had left that behind, and it will just come up and it's like, it's seductive. And I'm like, almost back in it. And then something will say, and then I can walk away from it again. And then it'll come back in a different way. And I'll be almost back in it. And then it'll something will say, no. And then I walk away. And for me, the fact that I'm able to keep walking away from something that keeps coming many different ways, that gives me hope. And to me, that's a success for me because I'm not getting sucked back in. And I know that sounds so strange, but it does. It just makes me feel like you're getting there. Slowly but surely, you're getting it. And that's all you can hope for in life.
Exactly. Your awareness is up. I mean, if you heard that little story, I walked down the street, I fell into a hole. I couldn't get out. I was helpless. I couldn't do anything. The next day, I walked down the street. I saw the hole, but I fell into it.
Yes.
I fell into it anyway. But this time I knew how to get out of the hole.
Exactly.
The next day, I saw the hole. I walked around it. The next day, I went down another street. It's just that awareness and making a new decision.
Yes. And someone said to me yesterday, the third time is a charm. They and I won't say who it was, but really quick, the person had said, we just talked a week or so ago, a client, and they were like, I need to leave this job. I said, okay, what's your plan? What's your exit plan? Well, they let the person was let go yesterday. And we laughed. They said, I'm in a good space. I've got this lined up, blah, 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 blah. They said, I'm in a good space. And then we laughed. And then she said, I guess I wasn't moving fast enough. Because I said to me, it didn't seem like you were going to leave. She said, yeah, I was going to leave. She said, I guess I wasn't moving fast enough for God. And I said, when was your last day? She said, it was yesterday. They let her go yesterday. And so she's like, I'm good though. But to me, it's like that same story that you just talked about, the whole, she knew she needed to go. But the thing that ties it all together, this was her third time at this job. She had been there 3 different times. She left and she was there 3 times. She said the third time is the charm. So she's like, I'm not going back now. So that's like what you're saying. I'm going to try a different street now because I know what this street is like and I know the pitfalls. So I'm going to make a change. And so I just thought that was so appropriate given the story because it does happen. That's a whole, but hers was she kept going back to the same job 3 times and now they've let her go. And she's like, I'm done, new street. So.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and for your wisdom and your stories. And it's just so enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. You have made this so easy. And thank you to your audience for being receptive and open to me. And all the best to you. You're doing such great work. I know that you're touching lives every day and making a difference. And I'm honored to be a part of your show and the work that you do.
Thank you. And I have one last question before we finish. What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Live for you. Don't live for anybody else. You're going to have detractors, haters, people throwing shade on you. Let them. Because if they are really for you, they won't throw shade. They will not try to minimize who you are. Find out who your cheerleaders are and then support your cheerleader as your cheerleader supports you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. TAS.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you again soon.
All righty.